People are starting to join the webinar. Great to have you all with us today. I am going to say what I always say, which has turned into a mantra, which I hope that after next March, I will never have to say again, which is it's great to see you all. It's great to have you coming in onto the call. It would be so much better if we were in a conference room in a lovely hotel somewhere and would be able to go for a coffee or a drink after the session. But it will happen. It will happen. It will happen. We were just talking about that before we went live. About the Seville event, which we are planning. We've got the sessions all sorted out, and I was working on the app today, and it feels like a little bit of normality is starting to come back. But that's why we're running these sessions, because as we were saying before the call, the speed at which that normality is coming back is happening at such a diverse rate across the world and across different territories. So that's what we're going to just have a chat about today. It's great to have my panel with us, who I'll introduce you to in just a second. Just to let you know a couple of things, if you would like to put a note in the chat box or put a note in the Q&A, please go ahead and do that at any time. I'll keep an eye on that throughout the session, and I'll put your questions and comments to our fantastic panel. Just a little quirk of Zoom, when you open the chat box, the default is to host and panelists. If you want to put a comment in that's available to see by everybody, to be seen by everybody, please flick that down to everyone, and that will allow that to happen. So we've got 50 people signed up for today, which is great. I know many people obviously will access this on demand on YouTube. So for any of you who are live in the session, if you do have to take a call, it will be on YouTube next week. So you will be able to go back over it, and we get fantastic viewing figures on that. So this is an update on the Middle East and Africa, and I'm delighted to have this great panel with us. I'm Renee Stegman, Relocation Africa. It's great to see you. Thank you for being with us. Marta from Maputo Relocation. It's great to see you. It's been ages. I can't believe it's been so long. Elena Danilova from Global Relocation Consulting in Egypt. Fantastic to see you too. And Maria O'Neill, Executive Expatriate.
Hello.
In Dubai. So straddling the continent, which is fantastic. If I may, Elena, can I start with you? It's great to see you. We haven't spoken in ages, so this is a real treat. You are in Cairo today, is that right?
Yes, I'm in Cairo. Nice to see you all. It's been a pleasure finally to see you. And we are looking forward to any face-to-face meetings, hopefully in the very near future.
Absolutely, same here. It's so look, how are things in Egypt? How are things now? But how has the COVID trajectory been over the last 20 months for you?
Look, first of all, I want to say that you can be jealous, but Egypt is living a normal life. Very normal. Yes, we are enjoying our time, and the businesses are back to normal. I would say when the COVID started almost 2 years ago, of course, we also went to or under severe measures related to COVID restrictions, and we stayed in home offices until this June. So basically, over a year, we were working from home. Most of the businesses also have not taken people out of the country. They were just also switching to the home office mode of work. So everything went very smoothly. Finally, we are back to normal. We have never experienced quarantine restrictions in Egypt on the upon arrivals. It has always been taken more or less easier than in some countries, as I hear. Currently, for example, it is only the PCR test taken 72 hours, within 72 hours prior to arrival. And now Egypt implemented also the requirements to show the vaccination certificates upon arrival to Egypt. Other than that, arrival is not, it is a very smooth and easy process. Hopefully everyone will come to Egypt in the very near future. We are welcoming Europeans and Americans to come and spend easy winter in Egypt.
That sounds absolutely delightful from where I'm sitting in quite a chilly UK. That's so, again, such a different take from the Egyptian authorities, that the working from home right through to this summer. That's amazing. So how about, I mean, you mentioned there that obviously you can now enter the country with vaccination certificates. Has that started the tourist industry again?
Yes. It started, actually, the tourist industry is totally operating normally.
Wow.
However, the restrictions, there are restrictions which have been imposed to the home countries of the travelers. This is not Egyptian government who is putting the restrictions. Yes, there are some governments of the countries which are not recommending traveling to Egypt. And unfortunately, until now, some countries are marking Egypt as a red zone. However, if we are talking about the current status of the number of COVID cases, the official statistics shows 880 cases in average for the last week. So if we compare to the States or we compare to some other countries, it is nothing.
Yeah.
It is nothing. Yes, we do have requirements, of course, to take care of ourselves. We are wearing masks in the public places. Whenever you go to the malls, there will be a service to check your fever, your temperature, if you have a fever or not. So you will not be allowed or not. There will be places at the entrances where you can sanitize your hands and wear masks. So the government is taking precautions. Whenever you go to the bank, it will be the same story. In the public places, in the transportation, all the measures are taken to prevent spread of COVID. However, of course, it is upon the discretion of the person to take care of himself. But the government is also encouraging and even enforcing the preventive measures. Now there is a huge campaign which actually started this February to vaccinate the population of Egypt plus the residents. So actually foreigners who are officially residing in Egypt, they are able to take the vaccines for free in Egypt. And there are many places where you can do it. The government made a very convenient service online where you can register for the vaccine. After that, you will be contacted when and where you need to go. You go, you take your vaccine, and now also the government implemented the special places for the travelers, because each country has its own requirements towards which vaccine will be acceptable for entry or which not. That is why Egypt, although we have several vaccines available, Egyptian government made special places for the vaccination of their travelers, where they can choose the vaccine and they can have all the vaccines, like the best vaccines in the world. So there is Pfizer, there is AstraZeneca, there is Chinese, there is Johnson & Johnson. By now we have all the teachers and everyone who works in education, everyone in medical industry, police and army fully vaccinated. The government already announced that from the 15th of November, they will not allow students in the higher education facilities and the universities, colleges will not be allowed in unless they have the full vaccination. The same will be implemented for the administration of the administrative services. For example, you cannot go and renew your license or get your work permit unless you are fully vaccinated. You will not be allowed. And again, it will start on the 15th of November.
Elena, thank you so much. That's it's again, I'm fascinated with the things that come out of these conversations. For example, you're saying Egypt was kept on a red list for such a long time with such low cases. And Renee, if I can come to you next, I know South Africa was on the red list for a lot of Europe and certainly from the UK, and yet you're at much greater risk of British people or Europeans coming into South Africa because our case rates are so high. How are you, Renee? It's great to see you.
Great to see you and everyone here, and yeah, just really great to be able to talk and share about what's happening in Africa.
So tell me, we were talking before the call. I know that so yeah, tell me how things are right now in South Africa across the country.
Well, yeah, from a COVID perspective, actually, I think our electrical connection is a bigger problem than COVID right now in South Africa. So we get cut off 3 times a day. We're on like level, I think they've got to level 4 from an electrical perspective, which means we basically get cut off 3 times a day. In Cape Town anyway, and it differs from every region around across the country. But from a COVID perspective, so South Africa had levels. So we had our very hard lockdown right in the beginning for literally 5 weeks, and alcohol bans and all those sorts of really strict things put into place. And then we've had since then no more. We had one small lockdown, but for the rest of it, we've just operated on these levels. So between level 5 and level 1, and we're currently on level 1. So we're all very happy. Our curfew's midnight. So whilst it was great to have the teenagers back earlier at night, it was harder for us to go out to restaurants and things. So so the curfew is now at a reasonable time for everybody. Alcohol sales are back to normal. Restaurants are able to operate normally, and very similar to Egypt, actually. Lots of precautions. Mask wearing is mandatory. Actually, you can get fined if you're not wearing your mask in public spaces. And all the similar sort of sanitizing protocols, temperature taking, usually at places of more sort of doctors and work establishments. They don't generally do that when you go into shopping malls and those sorts of things. So lots of precautionaries. And in terms, we've got a high anti-vax kind of population. So again, a big campaign to push the vaccinations. So they are now already trying to vaccinate right down till the 12-year-olds. So that's just opened, which everybody's super excited coming into our summer season now. Obviously, everybody wants to go out more and socialize more, especially the teenagers. And they actually, often cause the sort of, we've had a couple of teenage big bashes cause our second wave, actually. So yeah, it's really been important for us to push the vaccination through. In terms of travel, PCR tests pretty standard, throughout most of the locations in Africa. I just quickly can talk about maybe some of the locations because they are different. Kenya, for example, Nigeria, and others. So Nigeria still has a quarantine. Mandatory 7-day quarantine. And actually it's quite interesting. Tanzania has never had a lockdown ever.
Wow.
And yeah, one of the motivations actually for Africa, they were saying, because we've got such a young population and rural population, they out in the rural, there's less kind of chance that we're going to have a huge wave. Like in the UK, your population is a lot more condensed. You have public transport. So do we have public transport, but it is not as sort of intense as the UK's public transport. So that was quite interesting. So yeah, just Nigeria, you do have to have the PCR tests, and you also have to have the quarantine for a period of 7 days. Most of the other locations are all PCR tests and certificates required before travel, and on arrival you need to obviously show the proof of those certificates. So South Africa, it was quite interesting. I recently traveled to Namibia, and friends of ours traveled also into Namibia, but they flew in, and when they left to fly out, they were positive. They could not fly home. Yet other friends of ours who drove through the border in Namibia who were positive as well at the border post, they said, carry on driving, go home. So they didn't want them in Namibia because the hospitals were over capacitated then. So it was quite interesting, the different strategies that, one flying and one driving. So it's good to know, in some countries there's an option possibly if you need to get home to drive actually, as opposed to fly. that's all I can think of for the top of my head.
Thank you. That is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, again, I think that has, I'm not sure whether that's been the case in Europe or not, because obviously the borders are so porous if you're driving, as opposed to flying, proof, but driving, no idea. It was interesting what you say about the rural population versus the intensely sort of concentrated populations. I was talking to colleagues in the States, and they were saying, the difference, for example, between New York and LA. New York, 100% public transport, everyone on the tube, the subway. LA, everyone in their cars. I mean, this had a massive impact on the trajectory of the pandemic. Thanks, Renee. We'll come back. We'll talk about the impact on mobility. That'd be great. Marta Roff, it is so nice to see you. It seems like it has been ages. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. Thank you. Very happy to be here and feel this vibe. Looking forward to be at face-to-face, but so far it's good to be back here.
So you're in Maputo, Mozambique, and I know obviously it has been a very hard time for your country. How are you? How's your trajectory through all of this been?
So we have transitioned in September 2020. We transitioned from a state of emergency for a state of public calamity. So it will continue. It will still continue indefinitely at this red. They call it a red alert level. So while there is still risk of spreading the COVID in Mozambique, we didn't have very high numbers even from the beginning when we start closing and making the government starting to have stricter measures. But in terms of cases, we had so far 151,000 around confirmed cases. Deaths, we had just a little bit under 2,000. We have at the moment a big drop in cases. There is almost no cases in hospital. Also, I mean, we need to compare with the population of the country. So Mozambique is sitting now at about 32 million people in the country, and less than 10% of the population is vaccinated. Having said that, obviously the government has announced its vaccine strategy in the beginning of the year, and they have a plan to vaccinate. Obviously, they also rely on the vaccines that we can get. So they plan to vaccinate 16.8 million people, which is not enough, but that's what we can. It's reasonable so far. Also, we have seen that companies, also a lot of multinationals and local companies have launched campaigns of awareness and in partnership with the health authorities to vaccinate their staff. So now we can also start seeing their staff going back to work face-to-face. In terms of the filling and the COVID prevention, is still obligatory to wear face masks in public places and in any gatherings of people. You also have the temperature measuring and the sanitized hands, obviously the temperature measure, sometimes you go and you measure 32, so sometimes you're actually dead before you go into any place, but you still have that those measures. As also Renee has also mentioned, it is mandatory to present a negative PCR tests. Like, for example, if you go here, a straight flight from Maputo to Lisbon, if you have a European certificates, you don't have to present a test going there, or you can also, it's also accepted only an antigen a rapid test, but to come into Mozambique, you are required to have a negative PCR tests. So there is no compulsory quarantine. In the beginning, we passed through that stage as well, but no quarantine except obviously if you test positive or if you've been directly exposed to any positive cases. Curfew also has been extended from last Sunday, so now it's also from midnight to 4 o'clock. So I'll also share the same happiness with Renee that we don't have to control too much our teenagers coming home. So the last time, as I said, the president spoke was last Sunday, the 24th, and the decree will run until the 20th of December. And what I can, share in terms of highlights of what has also to do with the industry being aware of that. So face-to-face classes has resumed, including preschool, which has been closed for a while, so resumed throughout all the country. We also start, that we have the opening of the theaters, cinemas and cultural centers, shoppings, gyms, religious services, private social events. Also with the restrictions of its occupancy and also in terms of schedule, that it's open. The beach, everybody's looking to come to Mozambique and thinking about the sun in the beach has been closed for a while. Just recently opened, and a week later they closed the main ones, because obviously when you've been for so long prohibited to go to the beach, the moment it opens, everybody wants to go to the beach. And so the president has closed the main beaches in Mozambique. And it's also they only open until 5 p.m. In resume, and just to conclude, while in any other countries we have seen very strict measures, but now everyone is starting to go back to their normal routines, and so this happens in other countries, not in Mozambique. So you start seeing people going back to normal routines, no face masks that are compulsory, people vaccinated, etc. But in Mozambique, the measures, so we never had these very strict measures, but at the one, on the other hand, we don't see the end of the tunnel. So there is no expectation to follow the trend of lifting the restrictions as in other countries. And obviously this is due to the health facilities and the response in the health response to the cases. And so obviously for also the foreigners and also the locals as well, the biggest fears is while the public hospital or the private hospitals are well equipped, in cases when it gets worse, we don't have the last line of treatment. So there is also keeps a little bit the fear. So you need to be evacuated in one of these circumstances. But we'll learn with the people from Mozambique that to be resilient and adapt, and expats can rest assured to live happy and without fear.
Marta, I mean, thank you so much. It's fascinating again how this trajectory has been so different in different places, and what governments intended to do and how that was really culturally influenced as well. There's going to be some very interesting research to be done over all of this. Maria O'Neill, it is great to see you. We've spoken a few times over the past 20 months, which has been great. And I know right at the beginning, I mean, Dubai took COVID so seriously. I mean, even disinfecting the city overnight, right? I mean, again, talk us through the trajectory of how it's been for you.
Thank you, Dama, and lovely to be here, and hello, everybody. Yes, so at the beginning, we had a very strict lockdown. They had a disinfection program, sanitizing the city every night. So that was for about 6 to 8 weeks at the beginning. But then we opened up the country to tourists and everyone from the 1st of July last year. We came back to the office June last year, have been in the office ever since. Tourists have been coming in, business travelers, people coming in for events now. So we started off quite strict, but really since July last year, we were open up, we weren't in lockdown, and it's been open ever since, and compared to other countries in the world, I think, we've had it quite easy here, definitely. And, the numbers now are less than 100 a day. So they have handled it very well. We have 1 death or less a day. The total COVID deaths are just over 2,000 since this began. And the vaccination rollout has been fantastic. 87% of the population are fully vaccinated, and 97% have had at least 1 shot. And they're now starting a round of boosters for over 60s and people with underlying conditions. I think we're one of the top countries in the world for rollout of the vaccine. And we were ranked quite recently as well, number 3 in the world for COVID resilience as well. And I think Abu Dhabi was ranked the 1st in the safest city of the world, and Dubai the 5th safest city in the world. So, the UAE has handled this very well. And you know, as a result, we're now like the city in Dubai is super busy. Things are just crazy here. People are coming in for, you know, business travelers, leisure travelers. People are coming for events and conferences. We had some very big conferences recently, GITEX, Beauty World. We have the Dubai Air Show coming up. And some conferences and events that were meant to happen in other cities around the world were actually moved to Dubai, just because, you know, it's easy to get in, to come here, the central location. Basically, you just need a negative PCR test within 72 hours of arriving. Some countries, you need to take a second PCR test when you land. But that's pretty much it. We have at the moment here as well, I don't know if people are aware, but the biggest expo in the world, Expo 2020, was supposed to happen last year. It was postponed for 12 months. It started the 1st of October. And, you know, there's an amazing atmosphere in the city. Lots of people are traveling for it. It's basically 600 football stadiums size of a site, where you have pavilions from 192 countries around the world, all showcasing the best of what they have in regards to innovation, architecture, art, you know, cuisine, gourmets. It's amazing. They're expecting 25 million visitors over the 6 months. It's running for 6 months. It's a $7 billion extravaganza, basically. So, you know, it very much is business as normal here. In regards to restrictions, we're still wearing masks everywhere. They have become a little bit less strict. So going to the beaches, exercising, going to the hairdresser or spa, you don't have to wear a mask, but everywhere else you do. Social distancing of, you know, 1.5 meters. But besides that, you know, restaurants, cafes, hotels are at 100% capacity to allow people to come. But the problem is they can't staff the hotels. So most of them are working at 70-80% capacity, because that's all they can operate on. Restaurants and cafes are 70% capacity now, open till 3 a.m. in the morning. So really, you know, we're not seeing a huge difference from pre-COVID here at the moment, besides wearing masks, which I think everyone just accepts now that's normal. And I think as well, you know, in the UAE, we have handled this very well, and the government has definitely handled it very well, but we do what we're told here as well. So, you know, from the beginning, we wore masks. There was a 3,000 dirham fine. If you didn't wear a mask, you were caught not wearing one. So people abided by the rules. And coming in, everyone had to have a negative PCR test, some countries twice, one on landing again. So yeah, look, you know, we're in a good position, and the numbers are very low. The vaccination rate is fantastic. So yeah, just hearing from other people, not just on the call, you know, but from previous webinars you held and talking to people around the world, I think we're definitely in a much better situation. Even from a business perspective, we have calls with immigration lawyers around the world, with clients that are looking for somewhere to go for COVID asylum, and Dubai is quite popular in that list because we've great medical facilities, it's clean, it's safe. So really, I think the pandemic might be quite a positive thing overall for the UAE and Dubai.
I mean, it's great to think that, you know, there are positive things that will come out of what we've all been through, and certainly from the point of view of Dubai, that's one of them. I mean, I remember the last time I was in Dubai, which I think was 2019 or 2018, they were already building up for the Expo then. And I mean, I just remember thinking, when that was obviously cancelled last year, what a huge deal that was. So I'm so pleased that it's gone ahead, and it's the great success that it is, because it's an incredible thing.
And of course, it's going to be the biggest and the best they ever had in the world. They have to for the UAE.
It's the new Texas. That's so funny. If I may, I'd just like to now come on to do a brief snapshot of what's actually happening in our industry, because obviously, you know, from your perspective, Marie, there's a very different, you know, impact on your business to say Marta and Renee and Elena. So Elena, can I start with you? How, like you say, you've got people coming back into Egypt. Egypt is open for business. How is mobility?
First of all, if I look at the whole time of COVID being on ground, let's say, based on our experience, we haven't had so many departures. It was just a few departures. All the assignees were kept working from home, as I mentioned before. So we didn't lose much of the business from what was already on ground. Of course, the volume has been affected by the COVID restrictions of the countries we cover, and mostly for us, it affected the Gulf area. We are covering 18 destinations in the Middle East and North Africa, so volume-wise, Gulf was the one which was hurt badly. We were very happy, extremely happy that Egypt and Saudi Arabia have been all the time very high volume. We've got accounts which turned out to be very resilient. This is a good word to use in this instance, because there are some companies which, whatever happens, they were just taking precautions and still doing their business. And this, we have several ones in Egypt, and we have several ones in Saudi Arabia, which actually helped us to run the business smoothly. And this was just balancing this lost volume which we had in some other destinations. I would say that we don't struggle with the housing. Service-wise, we still deliver the same service as we do. Housing in all markets, it is we don't have issues locating housing whatsoever. And especially in the big countries which have been developing very quickly, like for example, again, if we are talking about Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the housing supply is increasing. It gave us the possibility to negotiate the rents, yes, but still, wherever it is possible, because in Saudi Arabia, you don't discuss, you just take what is offered, for example, in the compound. But basically, in Egypt, we do have some possibility to negotiate the rents, and it is pleasing the relocating assignees. I have been refusing the idea of remote services, although our partners and GRC has been always working with the RMCs as a priority. Historically, it turned out to be like this. So the RMCs have been pushing for providing the remote services, like switching to the remote services. However, for the last 2 years, we have not provided one desktop service or remote service. We are explaining that in the Middle East, it is a completely different issue. It is not that easy. Plus, we tried like a couple of times, but again, we switched to the normal service delivery because this way or that way, you can find the way how to deliver the service. In the worst cases of restrictions or the time of restrictions, we were, for example, using the 2 cars, one for the assignee, one for our consultant. After that, when the countries eased the restrictions, we returned to the masks and sanitizing, but still using 1 car. But of course, in some countries, there were restrictions on the number of people in the cars. Still, it is doable. But in any case, in the Middle East, it is the best to have a person with you so that you can discuss and explain. There are so many different items you need to pay attention to. You need to explain the culture. You need to, beside the normal like housing, settling in services, you still need to let the people fall in love with the destination, because it is completely different. Most of them, they've never had experience like this. So I am for the face-to-face service until now. We will see how the industry is going to develop, but hopefully Middle East will be the last one to start offering this kind of services. There was, by the way, I very much agree that there was a very good influence of the COVID on some parts of the services. For example, some countries during the COVID time, they've introduced the online government platforms to ease the processes to apply for the visas, for the driving licenses and other services, which are really useful for the assignees, and they can help us to deliver the service without going through the hassle. And some of the countries are looking at this opportunity. And Egypt, I'm also happy to see that Egypt is also on the way. They have not yet provided solutions for the government to deliver immigration services online. But I hope it will happen one day. Still, we are going to the offices and we stay in comfortable places waiting for your ticket numbers to go and apply for the work permits. But I'm hoping, because I saw already the Minister of Interior has started creating something like the online platform. Hopefully it will be there. Some companies in Egypt introduced recently applications which allow paying utilities online, and also you can use their services to renew your local IDs and driving licenses. So I find it extremely convenient. Hopefully it will go in this direction for some administrative tasks, the routine procedures, the paperwork. Also for us, I would say from the standpoint of the business, COVID had taught us also a very important lesson. We have been working only for the RMCs since the company had started long time ago. And COVID time just showed us that we need to pay attention more to the local direct clients, because this also helped us to survive or go through the COVID time. We've done very nicely with some local companies we've signed contracts with, and we kind of switched or redirected our work from serving at some point European and American clients to serving and the relocating employees who were coming from African countries to Egypt, for example. Also in Saudi Arabia, we see a lot of expatriates who are of Arab origin. So it looks like the businesses also are reconsidering, based on the restrictions, from where they're going to have their hires and how it is going to affect the business and the mobility overall.
That is fascinating. I think from the point of view that what you're saying about diversification is something that we've spoken about a lot over the last 20 months, and I think it's really key. And congratulations on doing that. Just as a small plug, at the Civil Conference, we will actually be running a direct client symposium for the first time alongside immigration and corporate housing on the Tuesday, for exactly that reason, because it's become such a hot topic. So thank you for bringing that up. That's great. And Renee, how about, that's one of many things that have changed about our industry, and we've spoken a few times. How's mobility now working across your region, South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania? How are things?
So it's been interesting, actually. Right in the beginning, obviously we were concerned about, where this was going to lead us. We had a definite outflow of departure services, so it kept us very busy. And then we sort of had a middle sector where it was worryingly quiet. So just where it is right now, literally when the UK and the American school system went back on the 6th of September, it was like everyone woke up and we suddenly got this inflow. So we're now receiving, a lot more inflow into all of our locations again. I think, from an Africa perspective as well, is people are nervous. I think we wrote about travel anxiety, at various points in some of our social media posts, but, expats are nervous. And in Africa, we need to try and build this confidence. And that's why I would gather, UAE would be doing so well, because they've done that exact thing, making the assignee feel confident and be able to travel with the medical facilities and everything else, and the way they vaccinate, etc. So we really have got a lot of work ahead of us. In saying that, we are quite a diverse business, both geographically and from a service line perspective. So that is how we have survived. We also, one of our divisions does research for ECA, Inc., etc., across the continent. And because they couldn't fly their researchers in to go and get that data themselves, we had people on the ground to be able to do that for them. So we, our research division actually has tripled. So that's been really good. And yeah, so we've pivoted about 300 times. I actually now hate that word pivot, but we've literally reinvented 100 times with services. And actually, to Elena's point, like in terms of the virtual service offerings, we have them on our price sheet. We are happy to offer them. We have the tech to support us. But actually, the clients are not really asking for it. So what they are asking for is price consideration. So as soon as they ask that, I then offer the hybrid approach, which is a mix between, you know, a virtual offering and a face-to-face offering. We can't just reduce price. You know, I mean, in Africa, we have the highest inflation rates, the highest petrol increases, the most volatility with the currency conversions. So, you know, it's not going to be just a numbers game. It's actually going to make sense from a business perspective. So we've been offering our clients, you know, the opportunity to repackage or offer their clients from an RMC to client perspective, a different way to offer their clients a price saving. But we've also, with that, also really try and emphasize the duty of care. So I actually was just on a call today with a big oil company, and they said, you know, their biggest concern is the duty of care on the providers that they're using. They're very concerned about supply chain stability in terms of companies. So they really are looking at people who are serving them in terms of, are they going to be around? Are they going to be able to serve their assignee population? There's enough volatility already. So there's a lot, I would say, more concern about, you know, governance and compliance, which I'm obviously very happy about because we are pretty robust on those fields. So we are not seeing from our corporate directs a huge price pressure. And because we are able to directly motivate either a service package which would meet their budget constraints if there are any, or motivate our price quality, you know, offering, which they're more concerned about from a value proposition perspective. Just on tech, what I have noticed, we, again, 101 pivots. We've also offered completely virtual, for example, move surveys. A client I was chatting to recently said I could do this entire move survey virtually for you, would then scrutinize all the surveys that came back, and then, you know, go into consultation. The assignee said, no, I physically want someone to come and see me. And so I think the importance for our industry to understand is tech is not going to replace what we do. Tech is going to support what we do. And so I think the sooner we all understand that and not be afraid of tech, or the tech guys who are out there offering tech over the old way, I think we are the best way, and the tech can only support what we do. So that's been very interesting from a corporate perspective, understanding what they want. They want the tech, but they want us to be physically present with them. And then we're not getting requests in terms of the virtual assignments. In Africa, one of our biggest challenges, and I think my colleagues on the call could attest to the fact that we even get assignees coming in who are managing a team in South Africa who battle with the culture. To actually try and manage that remotely is impossible and will not get buy-in from the team. And so there's almost no talk in our industry, in our HR community, of virtual assignments. And those who are talking about it are usually American or UK based businesses who aren't looking at it from the lens of the Africa lens. So we're not seeing much of, you know, a lot of the lump sum discussions, you know, that's actually considered a lack of duty of care in Africa, because if you're giving your guy a lump sum, you know, money to go and sort out his mover, sort out this, and he finds his property and the landlord ain't there, well, you know, how do you deal with that? So the reality behind some of the policies that are set, I guess, from a global stage often don't, you know, relate into the African context. And I really think I'd like to emphasize that, because we're not often on stage to be able to present the African context. But it's important to understand that it's different. It is really different in our context.
Thank you, Renee, for making that point, because that it's I've never understood global solutions for local challenges. It makes no sense. It makes no sense from duty of care, like you say. I hope that one of the things that comes out of COVID is that duty of care trumps lump sum and virtual. I mean, Marie, we've talked about this. I'm going to come on to you in a minute, but you know, the whole debate all the way along about virtual services. And as you say, Renee, they worked in an emergency when things had to be done and there were governmental restrictions in place, but I'm not hearing anybody saying, oh yeah, we're now moving to our virtual platform because we pivoted to it. And like you said, 101 pivots and back where we were, hopefully. Marta, how has that impacted on you? I mean, obviously, I'm guessing it's still quite slow, but all of those debates, how are you doing?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Renee. I mean, in Mozambique, we would never go to take the tech to substitute the face-to-face. But no, we've seen a lot of departures. Obviously, I believe it has also to do with the responsibility that the companies will have with expat and their families. So health, security risks, you know, travel restrictions, and if you get a family stuck here that they cannot go out because there was a lot of travel restrictions in the beginning, so that they decide to take their families home. Now, with the travel restrictions being lifted, there is indeed a number of expats and family coming back and new assignments planned. We're starting to see that buzz. Because also the companies are coming back to the office face-to-face, and with the schools resumed, we see that it's starting now, but not booming at the moment. But we start seeing these plans for the beginning of the year. Houses, have they are available. There's still houses available, and the price kind of maintained. Except for the older houses, would be more negotiable. Newer properties inside compounds are always more sought after, so it's more difficult to negotiate. But also, as from March, between January and March next year, we expect this boom to the start of the more, as I mentioned before in the beginning, with the Coral FLNG operations. So we're starting to see that's to happen, and building the trust to bring the new families back. And also to mention that, after a long way of instability, and caused not only by the COVID-19 pandemic, but we also had the problems with the attacks of the insurgents in Cabo Delgado, where all the big oil and gas investments are located. That chased a lot of families away, and obviously the companies would rather have their families back home and safe for both reasons, for COVID and the insurgents in the north. But as the oil and gas investments are starting to being a light at the end of the tunnel, and the reassurance by these companies with the government that they will start, later than was expected, but we actually start having the feeling of the hope coming back. So, we are really expecting these families to start moving back from January. We're reaching the end of the year, so it's nothing going to happen too much. And we, from the beginning, we got by. We managed to keep our staff, and we didn't take off from their salaries, so which was very happy with that. But still, we struggle to maintain, because like Renee and was saying, it's impossible to run this business without being face to face. So for us, we had definitely there is no way that we could adapt to that tech reality. But also in Mozambique, there is also the COVID also allowed us to look into the country, and with other industries like agriculture. There's a big opportunity for agriculture. It's definitely a promising sector of activity for investments. Even in terms of nature, the national parks, so we're talking about Gorongosa, that new leopards coming into repopulate the reserve, and also the Maputo Special Reserve You know, the first lot of cheetahs have been transferred into the reserve. And, you know, I just bring these facts because this shows that the country is really committed to flourish and actually to show outside that that, you know, we are ready to start welcoming investments. And so I do believe that like every other country, Mozambique wants and it needs to gain the trust and confidence that it's safe to be here. We need to see the economy moving, and so we are positive in the near future. So obviously, that said, we hope to see an increase in our sector, in our industry. And for us, this is a moment to keep strong and plan the future, because we are in this moment that it either flourishes or it breaks. You know, the country cannot afford to keep stopped, and we have a lot of all these big investments on the pipeline, and obviously all the stakeholders that are engaged and partner with these big investments. So we like I said, it's a moment to keep strong and plan the future of operations, taking in consideration this expected boost in the professional mobility in Mozambique.
Marta, thank you so much. I mean, it's, yeah, what can I say? 2022, reset, revive, and thrive. It's got to go that way. This is where I think every government now is having that internal debate about living with an endemic disease which we can control, as opposed to the impacts of the lockdowns and the quarantines and the lack of travel, the lack of mobility. So fascinating. Thank you. Marie, we've spoken a couple of times. I'm just going to go back to the points that, you know, quite a few of you've made about virtual assignments just not doing it in the Emirates at all. It's just not culturally going to work, is it? How are things?
Yeah, and I'd 100% agree with, you know, the ladies and Renee, especially what she was saying, that, you know, we launched a whole package of virtual offerings. We've had a handful of packages being used. Basically, you know, everyone wants the face-to-face, and I definitely would agree with what Renee is saying, that, you know, people want you on the ground with them. And I think maybe it is just in the Middle East and Africa, there is more of a push towards that, or if it's globally, I'm not sure, but definitely in our regions. But I do agree with Renee as well. We need to have this hybrid model. So you do need the technology alongside the face-to-face service. And if you can get that mix right, then I think that's definitely the future. So I'd 100% agree with that. And, you know, the virtual services, yeah, just didn't take off in any of our locations in the Middle East. And in regards to other points, you know, the ladies had made departures. We saw a huge amount of departures in 2020. This year, we had very few departures. In the UAE and Dubai in particular, the housing market has just gone crazy. There's a lack of housing, especially in the popular areas, and landlords are playing silly games. And we had one assignee who completed a survey, and he said, I was thankful I was using a DSP, because it just felt like the wild west when it came to dealing with real estates and landlords. So yeah, it's just gone crazy here. And temporary accommodation as well, there is a shortage. It's very expensive because we have Expo happening. A lot of accommodation being used with that. You know, some temporary accommodation was converted to long-term accommodation during the lockdown. And, you know, various reasons, and it's just shot up. And as well, another reason is, you know, people's goods are taking a lot longer to be shipped with the lack of shipping containers and the logistics problems. So, you know, 1 month in temporary accommodation, they now need sometimes 2 months or 2.5 months. So all these factors are pushing up the demand and the price for temporary accommodation. We're seeing people, nearly every assignee bringing a pet with them, a huge increase. I think everyone adopted or purchased a pet during the pandemic. So that's a big change. And we're seeing companies are hiring again. You know, Emirates have a huge recruitment drive on here. Companies are hiring, they're bringing in people. So, you know, it's busy, we're busy. And there was a pickup, you know, it never dropped completely here. But it started to really pick up June this year. And the last 2 months have really been like, you know, back to 2019 levels again. I think some of it is probably a backlog that we're getting through now, but a lot of it is new authorizations as well. So, you know, it is very positive.
I'm so pleased to hear. It is amazing the trajectory that this has taken in different places. But I mean, obviously, you know, Dubai set itself up very much, and you know, the rest of the Emirates, to make sure that they were still this centre of commerce, which is clearly, you know, back to where it was. If anybody has any comments or questions, please put them in the chat box. I'm going to draw to a close. We're close to the hour, but I think you've just raised some fantastic points, all four of you. Thank you so much. And I think, like I say, if we can say that 2022 will see the duty of care over lump sum debate become really a super important one, because I think probably what we've all learned in our own experiences, not just within this amazing industry, but our personal experiences, that, you know, the duty of care that we owe to each other in extraordinary circumstances like COVID just gets higher and higher and higher, whether it's, you know, dealing with your parents or kids, or, you know, or dealing with expats who are, you know, basically being thrust into a completely foreign environment in times which are extremely uncertain. Renee, Marta, Elena, Marie, thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you, Justin. Great conversation. Thank you, team. Let's do this again before we meet all together in Seville. And it's been really a pleasure to speak to you all, to see you all again. And like I say, the next time, I hope, after another virtual one, which we'll do at some point, the next time we'll be in a lovely hotel in the sun in Seville. So until then, thank you so much to my brilliant panel. Thank you to everybody for taking part. And as I say, it will be on YouTube.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dom. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.